Welcome back to Horrifically Well Read, Bled, and Said. We are very excited today to be talking to Jenny Kiefer, who wrote one of our favorite books last year, which was This Wretched Valley, and has a book coming out in just a couple weeks in the beginning of October, Crafting for Sinners, which will 100% be on my end of year top 10 list. One of my favorite books I read this year. So we are very excited to talk to you. Welcome, Jenny.
Hello.
So, when we get started here, we always like to ask, have you been a lifelong horror fan? Is that something that's more recent for you, somewhere in between? What is your horror story?
I think I've been a fan for as long as I can remember. I've always been a big reader, and I think I had like the typical pipeline that's like, scary stories to tell in the dark, to Goosebumps, to Fear Street, and then more adult. There was a period when I read mostly classics, but they were sort of still like dark classics. Like I read a lot of anti-war books and I read a lot of Southern Gothic, so like William Faulkner and Kurt Vonnegut. And my favorite book is Catch 22 by Joseph Heller. So I do think that a lot of those works influenced my style, even though they're not, technically horror. But within the past like 10 years, maybe, I've really gotten into more of the genre proper, I guess.
So, for the classics, that's funny because I feel like our reading stories are like exactly the same. So, I was definitely the same, scary stories to Goosebumps. And, I kind of had like a stop off at Fear Street, but I feel like by the time like those were being sort of sold to me, I was already like Stephen King and like, all that kind of stuff kind of mixed in. But then in high school and then especially in college, I definitely read like pretty much like 50% classic, 50% horror,
Mhm.
and definitely drawn to like the Russians and the darker, kind of things. I also love William Faulkner. I think, maybe the greatest American literature book, even though they are very problematic. I think Absalom. Absalom is maybe one of the best books, ever written. A huge Flannery O'Connor fan and stuff
Yeah.
too. Was that just what you were drawn to, or was that like part of your schooling, or what made you want to read those?
I don't know. I mean, I think when I was in high school, I was a very pretentious teenager.
Yeah.
I was like, I think if I, had to interact with my teenage self now, I would find myself very obnoxious because I was one of those people who was like, I don't listen to anything on the radio or that's really popular and everything has to be like high art. So I think maybe it was partly that, and I was like, I only want to read classics because they're high art, but I still gravitated towards, like I said, like darker classics. I can remember reading a book called Johnny Got His Gun, which I think there's like
Yeah.
a metal band that did like a video based on that.
Yes, who was that? We were just talking about this because that Rebecca's one of her best friends. That's her favorite book of all
Yeah,
time, and that's the one where he's stuck in his body, right? Like, he
Yeah.
has that locked in
yeah.
syndrome. Yeah.
Like, look, she gave me that book like almost 2 Decembers ago, and I still been putting it off.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
I
probably
mean,
my time to do that now
I
because
think
it's
it's
so good.
like the a soldier who's like all of his limbs and like his face have been
Mhm.
blown off, so he's just like
Yeah.
a torso kind of with a brain.
Oh
That's
my
I mean, if
god.
that's not horror, what is, right? Like,
Right,
that's
Yeah.
right.
amazing.
Alright, Jenny, I'll bump it up. Jen always has excellent recommendations and
It's
whatnot.
like you definitely have to be in the right mindset
That's
for
what I've
books
been
like
putting
that,
it
I
off.
think, yeah.
Like, I
Yeah.
feel like but yes.
Yeah. No, that's really cool though. I think that's funny because, even I think when Rebecca and I first met, I had a little bit of that pretentiousness
Just a
in me
little.
too, where it's like, "What are you listening to?" "Oh, you wouldn't have heard of them yet." That kind of like
Yeah.
Adam, if that isn't you to a T, it was I was like, "Okay."
Yeah.
But no, you definitely I remember you talking about how your friends would be like, "Hey, do you wanna go hang out and do something?" You're like, "No, I'm reading a classic, like,
Yeah.
I'm too busy."
It would, like, be irritating. It's like, "Hey, let's go do something." I'm like, "No, I'm in St. Petersburg right now. Sorry, I'm good."
So it's good to know that you both are weirdies
Yeah, I
and
love
that
that.
you
You
know,
know?
have that affinity, like, for those things together.
Yes, and then obviously horror obviously became a big enough that you, you know, own a horror bookstore now, right?
Yes.
How did that come about?
Um, well, it was kind of I think, a lot of writers always like, they want to own bookstores, but my parents own the building, and I run the bookstore with my mom, and it was kind of one of those things where they were talking about at the time, a little bit before, like, we had a plan and stuff, but they at their when we first decided to go for it, they were sort of talking about how, they were thinking about trying to get a tenant in the space because my dad's business was just kind of like using the building. He just uses it for like bookkeeping. He didn't have like customers that came in there or anything. So they were talking about getting a tenant in there. And so then I think we, sort of thought like, well, we have this space. We have the ability to do the few minor renovations ourselves that we would need to do to the space. And my mom and I together had a little bit of seed money. So, we just sort of decided, like, well, let's just see what happens and go for it. Like, the worst case scenario is like we're out that money, that seed money,
Yeah.
because we didn't have to get a loan or anything. So so we decided to try it out, and we've had a really good reception. And I think, like, we decided to go for a horror specific bookstore. Mostly, I think because, like, that's the genre that I was like at the time I was working on this Wretched Valley, like the early draft of it, and I was getting more involved in the horror writing community, and I was learning about all these really cool smaller publishers, like indie publishers that were doing really cool things, but it was kind of like you almost had to know about them and like order the books online. You couldn't just
Specifically,
like
yeah.
discover them in a store.
Mhm.
So I kind of wanted to be a space for that. And so yeah, we're really small. We're only like 400 square feet, but we're very slowly working on expanding into more of the building, which will hopefully help with events and stuff.
Yeah. No, that's awesome.
Small but mighty.
Do you think that, I would only imagine like as a writer that, surrounding yourself with all these wonderful works of horror is probably wonderfully inspirational for you as well as you're working.
Yeah, I mean, we've had an employee who works there most days that we're open now. She's been there for like a year and a half. But yeah, for like the first 2 years or the first year and a half, like I was there every Thursday and Friday. And then, it's like sometimes on the weekends.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is nice. It's a lot of work, but there's all, there are perks. Like we have a million arcs, so
But yeah,
don't, I pretty much don't have to buy any books anymore.
that is pretty sweet because it is expensive,
That
that's
is
for
a
sure.
sweet
It's an
deal, I
expensive
know.
hobby for sure.
Yeah.
One of the things that I always love whenever I'm either at an event that you're at too, or like, with different authors and stuff, or, see that you're at one is the little book pins that you make for all of the authors, and obviously we're going to talk about crafting, obviously, is a big part of things for you. Was that just, I'm a fan, I want to make this to show that I like these books? Like where did that come from initially?
I don't remember why I started doing it. I pretty much only do it for StokerCon
Oh, okay.
because that's where, like, I feel like most
Everyone is.
people, like, yeah, it's like the largest group of people. I mean, I've always been a crafter, always, like, I've been knitting for almost 20 years now.
Mhm.
And before that, in high school, I would do some rudimentary sewing and just sort of
Yeah.
general crafting. But, I pretty much do everything. I'm just like looking around me now. I have like a little Cricut
Yeah.
puller
I'm
tool.
hoping you,
I'm playing with
make
a
some more of those.
painting scalpel thing. I've got like jewelry, pliers. I've
Well, I can
got
see where some of
a
the
linen
inspiration
kit.
in the book comes from. So,
Yeah, but I love how you're even when we saw you at Spooktastic, your sweater said crafty
that's what I
persimmons.
was gonna say.
Yeah.
Hopefully you make some more of those. I would 100% buy and wear that. Like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it would be very expensive. The yarn itself was like over $100.
My I mean,
Darn.
it looks very
This isn't ex
comfy,
You
so
know what, Jenny? You could maybe raffle it off as a giveaway to someone that,
yeah.
as you launch your,
Maybe.
you know
If people I don't know when this will be posted, but if people pre-order, um, the book through my bookstore, they will get entered
Right.
to win an item knit by me. It won't be that sweater.
That's awesome.
Alright.
You definitely want it because your
I'll have
stuff
to
is quality.
pre-order 5 or 6 of them now.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
But
know. Yeah. So, what I thought was really interesting is I had read this Wretched Valley before I ever met you.
Mhm.
And knowing that you were coming on the show, Adam's like, I'm gonna make sure I get that one read too. But love to go into that one first, and then we can go move into Crafting for Sinners.
Yeah, and,
Yeah.
aside from maybe, like, the location, there's such different books,
I was
like
just gonna
and
say,
I
yes.
love that, and,
It shows your
um
range.
yeah. So, first of all, I would wanna say, like, was that purposeful as you approached, your 2nd book, where you, like it seems like a very personal book, I would imagine, and then also, like, this is as different almost as possible from the initial, your first book, which and I love both of them, but was that, when you came up with the idea where you're like, "Wow, this is really different, I wanna do that," or where it just kind of naturally came about?
So, unlike a lot of writers, I tend to get one idea at a time. So, it wasn't really intentional, and actually, I think, even just the process of, like, the writing process and schedule for Crafting for Sinners was so much different than Wretched Valley, and it was kind of, like, honestly a little nerve-wracking to have a second book that felt so different from the first one. It was kind of
Yeah.
like so if
Like, is
you
your fan base gonna like it? Is
yeah,
that
like,
kind
is my fan base gonna like it? I do think and I got this way with Wretched Valley, I did reach this point too, so I think it's just probably one of those things that's gonna happen with me, at least every time I write a book, is to where you get to, like, the final stages where you just have to read it a billion times looking for, like, errors or, like, copy
Right.
edits and stuff that you're like it's one of those things where, like, if you stare at something for too long that you've made, you're like, "Is this bad? Is this terrible?" And,
Oh,
I
you
got
get in your head.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah, yeah, and then, like,
Alright.
but I got to that point with both books, and I guess luckily for the world, I guess it was at the point of no return, like, the book was I couldn't back away.
My god.
"Never mind, I take it back." No.
We almost didn't have it. That's what I'm hearing.
Well, I can tell you, like, Crafting for Sinners is gonna like, everyone I know that's read it loves it to death,
That's good.
and it's
And
going to
I
be very
also,
popular.
It's not just that, it's everyone that hears the title and
Oh,
you
yeah,
yeah.
just, like,
I don't seek
hear
out
the premise.
reviews, so yeah, I didn't come up with the title. That's been the boat for boat. I did come up with this Wretched Valley. I think originally it was that Wretched Valley, but I think I don't know who my editor came to me with the title Crafting for Sinners, and that was a good one. After I feel like in publishing it's really weird, and sometimes for marketing purposes you have to like kind of compromise. So my original title was Hell for Certain,
Ooh.
which is, like, it's still in the book. There's, like, an actual creek in Kentucky called Hell for Certain. The town, Kill Devil, Kentucky, is fictional, but
Mhm.
I really liked the title Hell for Certain. I thought it fit, but I understood, like, for marketing purposes why they wanted the crafting, they wanted something about crafting in
Yeah.
there. But I think there was, like, a small battle where at one point, like, this sort of nebulous marketing team was like, "We want it to be" I think it was like they were both Bible verses, and it was just one of those things where, like, I kind of pushed back and was like, "Nobody can, like, Google like, this is not Googleable. If somebody Googles this phrase, my book is not gonna come up."
Right.
And that's important to me because I know people, can be very forgetful, they can be very lazy, so I didn't want it to have to be like
Yeah.
because I
You don't
think
have to
one of
work
them was
too
like they
hard
wanted
for
to
it.
do reap what you sow.
Oh, yeah.
Mm.
I was like, That's just too common of a phrase."
It's a little too, like, I don't know,
It's like an
On the
idiom, it's like
nose.
pitchy
a
kinda thing.
common idiom, and I was just like, I don't want if I want, like, you to search the title and my book will come up, I didn't want it to be like you have to do reap what you sow book, and maybe even then my book wouldn't come up, and you have to be like you have to remember the
Yeah.
title and the author name.
It also seems to, like, kind of be, I don't know, like, villainizing the main character when you say that too, like, she
Yeah.
did something wrong when the whole point is that she didn't really ever, obviously,
Yeah,
maybe
I mean, I guess
shoplifting, but we've all done that.
you could think it was, like, on the side of the cult is
Yeah.
reaping what they sow.
Yeah, hopefully. Just yeah, that's interesting. And for both books, Kentucky is such a character,
Mhm.
and obviously you know your state very well. And especially in this wretched valley, like I would have never known that there was like places to climb and rocks and things like that there. So
Yeah.
that was one thing, especially that was really interesting to me to think that there's
Mhm.
all these climbers in Kentucky because you
Yeah, I
always
did
think,
not know
out
that
west
Well,
and
either.
things like
there's
that.
the main climbing spot in Kentucky is Red River Gorge, which is in the Daniel Boone National Forest, which is not where the book is set, but that's like a world-renowned climbing area where people from all over the world come to
Interesting.
climb, and there's, like, tons of walls there. I've been there a few times.
Whoa, I'm
That's
looking
like
it up right now. Like, that's
yeah,
incredible.
there's, like that's, all sport climbing or trad climbing. That's not
Have you ever done
bouldering.
the kayaking?
I have not been kayaking.
Well, that looks really cool in there too.
There's lots of hiking there. So I picked Livingston, Kentucky for Wretched Valley. And I feel like this happens a lot when I am researching, is that I just find a lot of very cool coincidences that
Okay.
would not have thought of on my own. But so I think when I was like trying to pick like a spot, spot in Kentucky, I had already decided that I was gonna have these historical interludes and that it needed to be somewhere along the Wilderness Road, which is like the
Mhm.
colonizers' trail into Kentucky. And as I was looking at different like little cities along that trail, I found Livingston, and it had, I think it's closed now, but there was at the time a spot called Downtown Boulders that was just like this. I guess it made sense because it's Rockcastle County,
Yeah.
in Kentucky, so there are probably rocks there, but, it was just like this little, like, bouldering, rock climbing spot off of 490, and so I just thought that was, like, a neat coincidence, so that's why I picked Livingston.
Yeah, and, I see that you're, like, a big rock climber yourself, like, that the idea of that terrifies me, so I
Yeah,
love.
yeah, I'm looking at those pictures and I'm like, "I would love to go there." You would absolutely hate it. Like, you don't even wanna look at the pictures
I'm
probably.
not a huge fan of heights, so, you
Yeah,
know, you're starting obviously, you enjoy doing it, but, I'm sure even as a rock climber, this is ripe for people's fears, so
yeah.
adding
Well,
that and
I
then.
mean, I think
Yep.
I'm kind of like sometimes I feel like a poser rock climber because I mostly do gym climbing, like, I do really prefer gym climbing to outdoors, and I guess partly that's, like, a skill level, like, I'm just not right now, my main gym is bouldering, so I don't do a lot of, like I don't have a ton of endurance to do, like, these really tall walls because all the routes that I do, even if they're hard, are, like, 15 feet, and then you're done.
Yeah,
So I don't have a ton of endurance anymore to do like outside stuff. And then like when you get into outdoor bouldering, there's like a really small place near me, but most of those spots are like really far away from me. So I've only been to I've been to Chattanooga once. There's some bouldering there, and there's a place north of me called Muscatatuck in Indiana, but it's really small and there's not like it's not super difficult. So, um, but yeah, I don't go outside too much anymore. I mostly just gym climb, but I do it for fun. I don't have any aspirations like Dylan to be like a professional
yeah.
climber or anything.
I can tell you there's 2, the 2 really main sort of climbing sections that I think of in the book that, I was, you know, stressed out, borderline, panic just listening to. So,
Yeah.
you definitely captured like the idea of, these tiny little holds
Yeah.
and things.
And I mean, I do feel I was able to channel some anxiety of my own because I think I do feel that fear when I'm climbing outside because it just feels even though, like, I've only done really sport climbing where there's, like, permanent anchors in the wall
Yeah.
and,
Mhm.
some usually I think I've only done lead climbing, like, on really, really easy routes before, so usually there's already the rope. I'm not the
Mhm.
one putting the rope up, but there's still, like it still feels scarier when you're outside,
You're still having to
in real
trust, yeah,
rock,
that those things
like,
are
in a
yeah.
gym, and maybe it's because 'cause you're like, "I'm really far from a hospital if something."
Oh my god.
That definitely will yeah.
So, like, how muscular are your hands? Because between, like, the grips that you have to hold and then, like, doing the crafting stuff,
Yeah.
like, you
I
must
don't know
just
if
have,
I
like
can flex my hand.
what'd she say?
She's doing the
It's
yeah.
so
I
they're meaty or
no,
they're muscular?
I guess they are.
I mean,
I
the
really
stamina of sewing and knitting and all
Listen,
those things, it's
you
yeah.
you do not wanna get stole in the face by Jenny
No,
Kiefer.
you don't know. Absolutely not.
I can
But
do those 6 pull-ups right now.
The thing is, though,
I
like
can think about doing at least one.
there you go. There you
So
go. I love that, like, we just had Tatiana Schlatt Bonet on, and she's like a power lifter,
yeah.
and you're like doing the rock or the how do you call it? Bouldering is what you said.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, and then y'all are writers and readers, and I mean, it's just so much talent, unusual, like, and like fascinations of like,
Mhm.
I don't know, the more people I interview, I'm just like, this is, I love being exposed to
Yeah.
different, like, why aren't I doing that? Or
I'm like,
maybe,
I don't do
maybe I should
shit,
try.
man.
I think I do a lot. I guess I don't.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm trying to say nicely, but also just saying like,
It's super cool. Yeah.
it is really
Yeah.
cool. It's like, well, I never really thought about trying that.
Yeah,
Maybe I should consider it.
and then to put it into, a book, like, it's just
Right.
it's very cool, and, I feel like, I'm thinking this is purposeful that this Wretched Valley just feels like a nightmare. It has nightmare logic to it,
Yes, it
all those
does.
kinds of things. You know, I love anything, it made me I know you said a lot of people say like Blair Witch, but I think of like an outdoor, much worse Grave Encounters when I'm reading like this book. And it's just that idea that you travel all this distance, you work so hard, and then you're right back where these people were that you
Yeah.
left hours ago. And I'm like,
Oh,
that is
mm,
a kind of nightmare logic that like I just loved. And then, like you said, bringing in all of these sort of historical, I don't know what you want to call them,
I call them
ghost
interludes.
things. Yeah.
I don't know what they should be called, but
Yeah. But
she's like,
they're
I don't know. I wrote it. I just
yeah,
don't know.
they're scary as fuck. And so
Yeah.
that's great. So you said you get one idea at a time. What was the idea that this book sort of came from?
this Wretched Valley.
Yeah.
I think it was like I was at the gym and I was just kind of thinking like I think well before Wretched Valley I wrote like a novel that I have since trunked. There was a lot of I still like the idea, but I think like it would just need to be entirely rewritten and I don't know if I want to do that.
Yeah.
So, but I think when I was like, so I was kind of like had shelved that book. It was like a good learning experience for me. I was kind of thinking of like what could I write for like another book, and I think I was just at the gym, and it sort of just started with like, how could I make how could I incorporate rock climbing into a horror novel? And I think I just kept, like, thinking on it, and then, I think there was, like, a few images or scenes that came to me pretty immediately, like, I think this is maybe a little bit of a spoiler, but I won't reveal where it happens, but at one point, there's, like, a character who's climbing, and they go up to the wall, and then, like, suddenly, they're, like, encircled by rock, and they have no
Mm,
choice but to climb
mhm.
up out of it, and I think that was one of, like, the earliest ideas or images that came to
Yeah.
me. I think usually for me, I tend to think of like the ideas that come to me tend to be like more of the setting or the situation before even characters or anything else.
Mhm.
So I think that's what I remember how that one sort of
Yeah.
started.
And some of the historical things is any of that based on like research, or were you just like these seem like things that would have happened
Oh no, those
from
are
other
all
things?
based on Maybe besides the one that's, like, in the '80s. That one,
Mhm.
I don't think I did too much. I didn't d go, like, into a super deep dive on that one because that's
Yeah.
just kind of like
Mhm.
teens talking
I
about.
really like how you brought in like the social aspect of recording
Mhm.
and then I really kind of like the just overall breakdown of the mental
Oh,
capacity and
yeah.
just like
The sort of corruption of the fear and anxiety that
yeah, and
being
just
yeah.
like the friend group and it's
Mhm.
like I always feel like to speak of literature, I always feel like things go back to like Lord of the Flies
Yeah.
and that
The
really
breakdown of yeah.
that's what this kind of harkened to me for where you're like, man,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
leave too much shit, you're just start becoming what's the word? Like, insane because you can't get
Mhm.
out.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah.
you're just so and yeah.
So, were you saying before that the other things were based on more, like, things that you actually heard about, like, actual events kind of
Yeah,
thing?
the biggest one the one that I did the most research on was the Wilderness Road section, and, that one I guess I say I get one book idea at a time. I do have an idea to do, like, a Wilderness Road horror book because, I don't know if I would want it let's see, like, then that would require a ton more research, and I wanna get a few more like, I wanna get, like, the book writing part down or, like, feel way more confident in that before I also add in, like, a huge historical element,
Yeah.
personally. Um, but that one, I read an entire book about it and, also did, like, other research online. But that one was, that's another one of those so I talked about when I do research, I often find these, like, coincidences or these things that I would never have thought of. So that one, like, I think it whatever year it was, 1792 or something, that actually was legitimately the coldest winter on record in Kentucky.
Wow.
And it was so cold that the sap in the trees would freeze at night, and it would, like, would crack the trees, and they would sound like
Oh,
gunshots at
what?
night, and almost all wildlife died, and there was, like, I think it was, like, a surveyor or something from Virginia got stuck in a Kentucky town, and when he got back, they as you do, they did some bloodletting, and it said and the book described it as his blood being thick like tar.
Mm.
And so, it's like all of that went into the book. And of course, like being a horror writer, I added in, an element of cannibalism
Oh, yeah.
and like this, cursed area.
Casual cannibalism.
Yeah. But yeah, I never would have like thought of any of those details if I hadn't done any research.
No, I think it all leads up to just it just makes a very sort of, like I said, very nightmare-like,
Hmm.
thing, and you just get sucked into it and, reading it both, you know, in print and then it's an excellent audiobook too.
Hmm. Yeah.
So definitely anyone that has not for some reason read it needs to get it. But
So when you were saying nightmares though,
oh,
like, do you mean like are you using the word like nightmares and like what a nightmare or I felt like it was a dream I couldn't leave. Is that how you're saying it?
well, I mean, like,
Like
because it doesn't follow.
it was very claustrophobic for me, very what I think people
Mhm.
say of like a fever dream.
That's what I mean, yeah, it
Okay.
doesn't follow regular logic, and they're
Right.
awake and everything's fine, and you think,
Uh-huh.
things should make sense in a certain way, and what happens when it doesn't, and, like, not good things happen
Right.
when it doesn't, so it was great. I also love the idea that you tell basically the fates of all of your main characters in the opening pages of the book, and so it's a book that's much way more about, like, what actually happened and how,
Yeah.
you know, than that, and I think that sets it up really, really cool sort of thing where it's like, yeah, it's not gonna end well for anyone, but
Yeah.
it just gets worse and worse and worse, and you're like, "Oh my god, what's gonna finally,
Hmm.
be the thing that ends everything?" And, it's so interesting and definitely that sort of feel, the very found footage feel, the very much like, this is still happening, whatever it is that's happening, will just continue going on and on and on. I love that sort of like almost mythic element to it, the story ultimately. So that was very cool. But now I want to transition into crafting for centers. And, you know, I'm sure you hoped when this book was initially going to be coming out that it would come out in a much better country that we have right now, but there is a lot of things that are just so timely about this book, and I'm sure they have been for a very long time, but
Mhm.
especially now are you looking at it and going, "Well, that's gonna be good for book sales, but not good for
Right.
humanity."
I don't think I don't think my thoughts have ever been like, "Oh, this is gonna be good for book sales," but do think, I do think that it is an important book, or it has maybe become more important
Mhm.
with the current events, that are happening. So, I hope it's well received, but I tend to, like, not really I don't look at reviews, I don't, like unless, somebody tags me or gets sent to me, I don't really look at that kinda stuff, I don't seek
Like
it
the
out.
sequel, yeah.
So, do you have like a favorite kill scene?
I
No,
really
no spoiler.
enjoyed writing the scene with the super glue.
Okay, I was hoping you were gonna say that because me and Haley Newland were just talking about this because I had read it, over the summer, and then she just read it like a couple of weeks ago, and all I got was a message that said "Glue Man" in all caps, and I was like, I side eye the super glue, and I walked past it
Yeah.
now.
That scene and the rat scene were probably my favorite ones to write in the book.
That's what I wonder. Do you find a scene like that? I'm sure you kind of know those scenes are going to come. Like, and I've heard different authors say like their reward, like when they're getting through certain parts that not that it's not fun to write or whatever, but it's sort of like your reward to get through all this is that this is coming. Does that happen for you too? Because Paul Tremblay had said that to me, um, and I'm just interested. Like when these big set pieces that they're going to be awesome, are you like, I can't wait to write that?
I think sometimes, honestly, like, when I was writing Crafting, it was the first book that I've ever written on proposal, and I had honestly, like, the actual, like, process of writing it is kind of like a really fuzzy blur to me because it was the first book I had to write on proposal, so I wrote the first draft in, like, 6 weeks. It was not very good, but luckily I have had a really good editor who made it better and had some good ideas, and, this is a downer, but at the same time, I was, like, writing it, the first dog that I ever adopted was very old, and he died last July, so it was like I was doing a lot he needed a lot of care at the end of his life, so I was, like, trying to write this book really quickly, and it was supposed to come out in May, and I asked them to push it back at one point. I was like, "I just can't do it this quickly." And they pushed it back to July, and then I didn't ask for a second pushback, but they pushed it back to October. I guess maybe just looking at their schedule, they were like, "Well, October is gonna be a better release date than July for a horror book."
Mhm.
But yeah, so honestly, like the actual like sitting down process of writing it is a little blurry to me uh, at this point. So
Yeah,
there was a
I
lot
know that.
going on in my life at that
Yeah,
time.
yeah. Does that affect sort of like your feelings towards the book? Like, you know, I think a lot of times, even with like songs and movies that we see, that we tie it to certain things. Like, is this going to be like a book that you feel like, you're processing that grief at the same time as you were writing it, whether you kind of like
Completely
explicitly
agree,
did it or
Adam.
not?
It
Yeah,
has it shapes it around it.
I think it was like that for a long time, and I think that, like, since I think it has gotten a little better since, like, I am done with it and other people are reading it, and I think, like, sort of if it makes sense, like, sort of, like, giving it to the world has helped with that, and so it's not just, like, me and my editor and my
Right.
computer looking at this thing and going through all that, and it's like other people are reading it, and it's sort of like I think a lot of artists feel this way. It's like once it's out of your hands and it's like finished, it's out in the world, and it's like not really yours anymore to some extent.
Yeah, that makes sense because it's like you can't tinker with it anymore. Like
Yeah.
it's in its final stage, and kind of is whoever reads it's gonna
Mhm.
perceive it however they
They're
do.
gonna bring their own experiences into it, and They're gonna have their own opinions, good or bad
Mhm.
about it.
Yeah,
I can't control that any of that anymore.
right. Speaking of which, it kinda leads me into the next topic that I was gonna talk about. It's like so many different things are sort of usurped or taken by different groups. And I think that like you kind of touch on in this idea of even crafting stores, like you walk into so many of them and they're just so overtly religious a lot of times. And, that kind of thing. And so when you were sort of describing the store, which obviously is not based on any actual store in real life. So it's like, it's that thing where it's like this assumption that a person that crafts is a certain type of person. And that being just such a stupid thing, to do, before it gets into any of the horror, I just thought that's a really great sort of thing to point out to say like, no matter what it is, everyone deserves to be able to go into a place and find things that they love and not kind of be like treated as othered all the time.
It's really interesting that
Yeah.
you say that, Adam, because I was sitting here thinking, like, well, that makes sense for a lot of, people that stay within like traditional women's work and whatever to be more conservative and
Mhm.
maybe they stick with this. But then when I started thinking about all my friends that do fabric work and
Mhm.
textile work, I'm like, they're all Democrats
Yeah,
and they're
all
like
very yeah.
really good at it.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, you're right. I'd never really thought about how they must be affronted
Yeah.
like every time they come in or confronted.
Yeah. Yeah, and so like I just, was that kind of experience, as a person that I know is a crafter. Is that, kind of where did this germinate as it got bigger and bigger as to what the book was gonna be about?
I think it originally started as it started life as a short story for a splatterpunk anthology,
Huh.
Oh,
and as I was trying to write it as a short story, I, quickly was like, "This is a book. This doesn't wanna be contained into
I
4 or
love that.
5,000 words."
yeah.
I love
Um,
that.
but yeah, so I think, like, the original idea I think one of my earlier iterations or ideas for it was I did want it to be a little bit more leaning into, like, a horror comedy, but I think as it evolved, it I mean, I think there's moments in Wretched Valley that I think are funny, and I don't know if anybody else thinks they're funny, but I think that there's humorous moments in Wretched Valley, and I also think there are still humorous moments in Crafting for Sinners, but, originally I think it was I think the original idea or some of the original ideas I had were, like, very much more Home Alone-esque,
Yeah.
um, like setting traps for,
Mhm.
the cult members and stuff, and I think just as I really developed the story and the characters, I was like, "That's not really where I wanna go with it." Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, I don't think I mean, I live in Louisville, Kentucky, which is, like, the most liberal city in the state,
Mhm.
and so I don't think I've really ever experienced any, like, weirdness if I've been in a craft store here, but I do think it's interesting, when I think about, like you said, like, the connection between, um like, home economics or, like, traditional
Mhm.
homemaking being, like,
Mhm.
a conservative woman, sort of like what are they called? Like, trad wives sort of
Right.
thing, but then also, like, alternative spaces are really into
Mhm.
DIY and that
Right.
same sort of thing, so there's, like, punk spaces or
Yeah.
alternative spaces are really into, like, repairing clothes and, like, anti-consumerism, and
Mhm.
they'll, like, sew on patches and, stuff like that. So, yeah, I think that's a really interesting dynamic that it's like these 2 ends of the political spectrum are
Right.
really into, like, DIY in some way.
Yeah. No, that's so cool, and, it has flashbacks and different things, within it, but ultimately, it's essentially, a locked room horror.
Mhm.
What were Was that difficult? Were there moments where you're like, "Man, why did I set this in all in one space," kinda thing? Or were you like, "This is so much fun to try to figure out what she does next?" Because it's like, where does she go? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's like, it's such a scary feeling.
Yeah, I think I went back and forth a lot of times with that. And I think one thing that really helped was like, I think most writers probably have like communities of other writers, and I'm lucky to be in a couple that are very happy to brainstorm with me. And I think there was like, I don't remember who it was, unfortunately, that told me this, but they gave me a really good piece of advice with that really helped with this story was to think of it as like domino effect. So it's like, how does
Hmm.
like her action at one point like sort of spiral into the next action? And the other thing that really helped was, like, I went to a few craft stores in my area, and I just walked around and made notes on, like, what is the layout of the store, what are
Oh.
some, I walked down almost every aisle, and I would make notes of, like, what are some things in here that you could use as a weapon if you really needed to.
Mhm.
I knew early on in the writing process that I did not want any, like, obvious weapons, so, like, all the
Right.
scissors and all the X-Acto
Have
knives
been
and
taken
plates
off,
Like a
just
yeah,
seam
gone.
ripper, things like that.
right.
'Cause, it's like, those are I don't know, I was just like, "That's too obvious." Yeah. It was just like that, and I could have probably gotten around it by just, like, there's some reason that she couldn't get to those sections of the store for whatever reason, but
Yeah,
I think
sometimes
it
they
was
have
just
those,
like
like, locked-in boxes that
yeah.
she didn't have the key for or something, you know? But,
Yeah,
yeah, I love
yeah,
how
like,
you get I love the insidiousness of that they purposely have already
yeah,
taken
and
all
it's
of these
like, I
things.
think it added, an element of depth to the cult where it's like, they're so cocky except for they're still like, "Well, let's take the blades out."
Yeah, yep,
But yeah, I think, one thing I had to do early on was I made a map of the store, which is, they
awesome.
printed it in the finished copies. I don't think it was in the art,
Oh,
but it is in the
excited to
finished
see that.
copies. There's, a map of the store, and so I had that map that I drew, and I literally, like, would, as I was writing and outlining and stuff, I would, like, take the map and on a different layer, I would, put, like, she's in the floral scene and then, like,
Mhm.
draw a line and say, "Okay, now she's over here. What is she gonna use and why does she go over there?" and stuff like that. And, I think, and then, like, when I was planning, like, where things were in the store, some of that was like, well, I know, um, I want her to be, like, far away from the front at this scene or, like, I purposely put the yarn and the textiles, like, kind of in the back corner of the store to make sure, like, just logically, like, then the cult has time to, like, lock the store and do
Yeah.
other things without her really noticing, stuff like that. Um, but yeah, so I think those were the 2 biggest things, and there was still but yeah, this one was, a lot more difficult to, like, map out than Wretched Valley because I think with Wretched Valley, it's just, like, this supernatural space that I could sort of do whatever I wanted with, um,
Right.
as opposed to, like, a real world store that, the the shelves are always in the same order. They're not moving around or anything like that.
No, that's yeah, that's I'm sure, but I think it's done to such a great effect, and the idea that she has to be so, she has to be thinking so much on her feet at all times, of what the different things around the store she's gonna be able to use. Because ultimately, it's not like she's given time to really think about things, it's like someone's there, she looks around her, has to figure it out, and I think that you do that in a really, like, non-cheating, authentic way, which really, like, ups that tension so well, which is great. I love also, like, the opening scenes in the book because one, this the relationship at the heart of the book, Ruth and Abigail is
Mhm.
just fantastic, but, the increasing paranoia that they're feeling for the things that are going on around them and, the fact that she's just like, "Okay, they are doing everything they can to get out of here." And just that feeling that they know time is running out, for something bad to
Mhm.
happen at some point. And then her kind of in that space in the store realizing it's come.
Yeah.
So, first of all, I just want to talk about, that relationship that is at the heart of the book and how wonderful it is. Is that based on anything? Is that just like, when you were writing this, were you like, I know I need that really powerful thing at the heart of it that's pushing her to move on, and just kind of where that came from and inspirations for that.
Hold on a second. I don't know if you can hear my dogs barking. I don't know, I think Honestly, like, I identify as bisexual, and I kind of learned that about myself pretty late in life, or, like, came to that realization pretty late in life, so I think partly this book was kind of me or my exploration of my own sexuality in a way, but yeah, I think, like, it was interesting to try to develop this relationship where you have like one like they're both fearful but of different things. So like Ruth
Yeah,
is fearful of abandonment and Abigail is fearful of like the violence against gay people and the things that are happening in their own community. Um so so yeah, like I think, like, those and at the very, like, sort of start of the book, those 2 fears kind of come to a head. So Ruth and that's, like, Ruth's emotional arc through the book is, like, her sort of trying to get over that fear of abandonment.
yeah, because they both, have in different ways been traumatized.
Mhm.
And, Abigail's trauma, like, she's kind of suppressed so much of it in a way too, and that kinda leads to almost, like, trust issues between them, at certain points too, and I think that that was a really interesting thing, for people that have these traumas, was a really interesting exploration to see how that, affects their relationship when ultimately what they both want is, what they already have,
Mhm.
in each other, but thinking, "How much do I trust that that other person does want this thing that we have?"
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool.
I
Did
wanted
you
to ask
Yeah.
about your experience on the horror panel, women's horror
Mhm.
panel. That
Yeah.
yeah, I really loved it. You were with a powerhouse group of women.
Yeah.
So Tanya Pell moderated, and then
Mhm.
there was you, RJ Joseph,
Monique.
Monique,
Yep. There's
Asher. Go ahead.
Vanessa Montalban. Yep.
Yeah, you seem
And
you seem like you really and then Wendy Dalrymple.
oh, yeah, Wendy. Yep.
So I felt like they asked such great questions,
Mhm.
and I forget which one you were asked, but you were like, "I don't really have any take on
Oh,
this."
Gothic. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just
No, the Gothic. I
I
don't
really
read a
liked
lot of
that you were just
Gothic.
like, "I don't have an opinion." Like, I don't
That's
have
not my thing.
it's not something to say on it, and I was like, "Okay." But did you take anything away from it from sitting with, like, your, the peer group and everything that, you're just like, "What's that like?"
I really did enjoy that panel. I think I learned things too because so I was kind of like assigned to be on that panel and when I was assigned it, they're like you're going to be on pink horror and I did had never heard that term before I was put on this panel. And, so I was like when I think I was the last one to get to the room, and they said that and Tanya had emailed us and said she was basically gonna go from, like, where she was sitting and, like, go down the row, and I was like, "Good, I'm the last person here, the chair farthest away from her is open,
Well,
Jenny,
so I
let's
can
start with
listen
you.
to everyone else be smart and just piggyback on what they say."
I will say those chairs looked astonishingly comfortable. I
They
don't know
Mhm.
if
were,
they
and
were.
they were spinny, so I was probably fidgeting the whole time.
Man, yeah, I wouldn't have been able to stop doing that
Mhm.
either. Um,
It just so now that you've heard some more of the pink horror, and I just think it's interesting because some of the people we've had on, like Wendy, really lean into it, and other
mhm.
Yeah.
people, it's an aspect, but I'm not sure how much I think your books do or don't fit into that. It's not a true fit for me personally, but in terms of the aspect of pink,
Yeah.
but maybe in the future you'll write something a bit more pink.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, like I said before that panel, I had never heard the term, so I definitely was not writing with that in mind.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because, these labels come about whether,
Mhm.
and it seems
But I like
to
how Tanya said that. Everybody likes to, we like to label things.
we
We
like
like
to
to
label things,
understand and
but
categorize, and
I think
right.
for, in horror, women writers especially, they like to put labels on, whether it's femgore or feminine
Mhm.
rage or, all those kinds of things. And, I don't think either of your books very like nicely fits into any of those things. It's like it's horror, and honestly, like this Wretched Valley is survival horror, which they're
Mhm.
not very good at surviving, and then, and then it's really cult horror for crafting for sinners. And, I think that I do like those labels in certain ways that it points people towards, certain books and certain authors.
Mhm.
But I also think that it's a way that people easily say, like, okay, these are where the women horror writers live, and sort of are able to put them in that sort of side category so that it's like, okay, here's horror and here's that horror. And
Yeah.
I like that you're kind of like, no, I'm horror. I'm over here.
Maybe it's an unpopular opinion, but I think there's, like, too many little tiny subgenres,
Yeah.
and maybe that's also, like, partly, something as, like, a bookseller that's, like, kind of, um like, in our store, we have, like, a big general horror section, and then we do have smaller sections, but they're, like, we have a BIPOC section, we have an LGBTQ section, we have, like, stories and graphic novels, and then, like, age ranges and, like, nonfiction, and then we have Stephen King and Joe Hill and Anne Rice quarantined on their own shelf. But beyond that, we don't really categorize, like, I don't know, I guess for me, I feel like I have seen some pictures of stores that will do, like, those small, like, genre stores that will do those, like,
Mhm.
smaller subgenres where they'll be like, "Here's our slasher section, and here's
Yeah.
our whatever section," but I guess for me, it's, like, maybe it's just because genre is too blurry, and
Mm.
too many books are gonna fit into too many different categories like that. So
Yeah.
maybe it's just, like, I mean, I have trouble. I'm in, like, my office craft room, and I feel like I have trouble figuring out categories to organize stuff here, so maybe I'm just bad at categorizing things. But yeah, I feel like when you get into that nitty-gritty, especially if, like I said, if you're doing it, like, for a bookstore, it's like there's not gonna be a novel that's, like, only fits in slasher.
Right.
Right, it's gonna fit into, like, a bunch of the other subgenres you have, and so I think that's maybe where I mean, like, when I'm writing or plotting, I'm not really thinking about, like, what subgenre is this gonna fit in, and
Mhm.
maybe that's because I only really get one idea at a time, so I'm kind of like, "This is the one idea, so that's what I'm writing."
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm
No,
not
I
really
love. Yeah.
thinking
So
about genre, I'm thinking about story and character, I guess.
right. Yeah, and I mean, I don't someone that really does love or find their niche in something, like, I don't, think that there's anything wrong with that necessarily either.
No,
Again,
it's
it's
just
like,
not
to own something,
what's in
but
my
yeah.
head when I'm writing.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's cool. So, we're getting very close now. The plan would be to release this episode the day before, probably,
Okay.
Crafting for Sinners comes out. So, I'm sure you have an event planned at your
Mhm.
store for the book release.
Yeah.
What are you most excited about with this book going out there, having that book birthday and
Um,
celebrating it? What do you look for and hope for this book?
I don't know, I hope it's received well. I don't know, I feel like this is only my 2nd time doing this, and it just feels at this like, we're less than 2 weeks out, it almost, like, doesn't feel real that it's, like, that close. Um Yeah, I don't know. Like we're doing the launch party at a brewery down the street from the store called a Rye Brewing, and the Louisville Stitch and Bitch group is joining us, so it'll be like
My
launch
god, that's
night.
amazing.
Um, we did do a live podcast recording for Wretched Valley at my launch, but like we didn't have a good sound set up, so like the people who are actually at the event couldn't hear anything. So
No.
yeah, so for this time, I was like, and I don't like doing readings. I think I'm a bad reader. And I also feel very bored when I read my own work out loud. So I just don't do it. So it's very much just going to be like a hangout, and we'll have books for sale that I'll sign and just hang out and craft sort of night.
Very cool. So, do you have a third idea that you're working on, or, is it sort of brewing things right now?
I do have another book that I'm working on. I don't have it's not contracted anywhere.
Mhm.
And the publisher of Wretched Valley and Crafting for Sinners is in a weird place, so I think it's
Yeah.
to go somewhere else. But I have my agent says he thinks he can sell it on proposal because I now have a track record.
Yeah.
With, I'll have like the two, like Wretched Valley went into three print runs so far.
Nice.
And yeah, I don't know about crafting yet, but that one will be out, after I submit. I have a full outline. So my writing process is I like have this period where I just am thinking about it. I'll take notes and stuff and do some research, and then eventually that produces an outline. And then once I have the outline, I break that into chapters roughly, and then I do what I call a zero draft, which is like some people that I've talked to would say, no, that's just your first draft. But I call it a zero draft because it's like 20 to 30,000 words. It's not a full book length. And
Mm,
it's just like what happens. I'm not worried about
okay.
like grammar or dialogue or
Yeah.
anything. I'm just like a long form synopsis of like what's
Yeah.
happening in each chapter. And then I go back and write the first draft. So I think my goal is to have that zero draft done this fall, and then I think I would feel comfortable selling it on proposal.
Nice. Well, whatever it is, wherever it comes out, I'm excited for it, and I'm excited for this to come out. I know you're gonna have a great reception for it because it's everything I look for in a horror book. It
Oh,
it
thank you.
is fun. It has that gallows humor to it, but also it's super intense and really wonderful. So I loved it.
Thank
Can't
you.
wait for it to come out and to see what you're doing next. So where do we find you online? Where's the best place to connect and all that kind of stuff?
I mean, I think for me personally, the social media that I mostly do is Instagram, and that's at underscore Jenny Kiefer. And then I have a website, jennykiefer.com. And the bookstore is at horror bookstore, I think everywhere. And then horrorbookstore.com.
Well, you definitely got in on that one really good to be able to get that, so awesome. So, definitely, pick up Crafting for Centers October 7th, and thank you so
Yep.
much for being with us,
Yes,
and
thank
Yeah.
you,
have a
Jenny.
Thanks for
great rest of
having
your
me.
day. Yeah, thank you.
Have a good night. Bye
Yep,
bye.
bye.